time to get geeked up.
But I guess that would pretty much bring us to the end, I guess, because we'll kind of get into really some of the more content of 6 and 7. But that's pretty much it. The two last episodes really detail really what in the whole essence of the thing is outside of the kooky redneck shenanigans. But the whole conspiracy plot of did Joe Exotic actually do a murder for hire, pay a murder for hire scheme, and actually commit attempted murder, or is he being set up by con men and, you know, like a crooked legal system, right? So I guess that's really the main question that everybody has after this is all said and done.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So I guess you want to just get right into it? You want to give our thoughts about the whole situation?
I'll give you my thoughts on it. I think, okay, here's my thing on it, is I 100% think that Joe Exotic tried to have Carol Baskin. I think he definitely gave that Allen guy, you know, Jeff Lowe's right-hand man money. What I think is fucked up is that he shouldn't be the only one that went down for it. I think Jeff Lowe should be in jail. I think that Allen guy should go to jail. Is that they kind of realized that they were going to get caught, and it was an easy way to send Joe Exotic up the river.
Yes, 100%.
But I think they all cut deals. Yeah, okay. I think they all cut deals with the FBI. I think Joe Exotic was the fall guy for it, but by no means necessary do I think he was just an innocent bystander. Like, oh man, I can't believe this all fell on me.
Yes,
like
because as of now, just to catch everybody up, I guess, just to like put the actual numbers on it. But Joe Exotic is doing like 80 years in jail, and everybody else is scotch free. That's like how it all settled.
100%. It's totally fucked up. Like.
I guess I would have a little bit of a different take, although a little bit of a similar take. I 100% feel Joe Exotic has been set up and did not actually commit the murder for hire plot. That being said, I do feel like they set up a guilty man in a lot of ways, and I do believe that Joe Exotic deserves to be in jail for a lot of the things that he went to jail for, I guess as well, to catch everybody up. But when he ultimately went to court, he was charged under 19 total charges ranging from attempted murder, but as well including all of the various animal rights charges that he has. So I think that definitely guilty of a lot of that shit, and definitely not a sympathetic figure that doesn't deserve to be in jail. However, a total miscarriage of justice in terms of him going down for the murder for hire plot. I definitely do not think he paid Allen the money to do it. They were total enemies, and I think Joe was like totally broke at that point and talked a lot of shit. But I think that if Allen went to him and said, "I'll do it for that money," then he's as well totally involved in the conspiracy plot. But I think that money came from, like Joe said, I think Jeff Lowe came up with the reason for Exotic Joe to give him $3,000 to make a cash transaction take place, knowing that would firm the deal for Exotic Joe to go down. So I think that's a total setup, and I don't think that like Exotic Joe, after all these years of talking shit, after going down, about to be going down for other stuff, I don't think he put down $3,000 to like his number one enemy when he already knew that he was already like under suspicion for potentially doing this stuff and under investigation. It just seems like such more of a story where Jeff Lowe, the guy's right-hand man, who was went out of his way to seek immunity from the cops with this information when he found out that another sleazeball that's involved in this whole thing was getting investigated by the feds. Jeff Lowe, by his own account, was like eagerly wanting to sell this guy out for his own protection for all of the charges that he's going to be soon facing. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. I agree with you. I agree with you on that. I do think that Jeff Lowe was definitely the mastermind behind this whole thing.
Yes.
I think he just got Joe on tape being like, "Do you want us to kill her?" And he's just like, "Yeah, of course."
Exactly, because Joe's been saying that on the internet for 20 years. He's a crazy redneck. Like, it's not going to take him a lot to do it. And if you went to Joe Exotic and said, "Hey, I'll give you if you give me $5,000, I'll kill her. They're equally guilty in the conspiracy. That's not him. It's like, I guess, a murder for hire, but it really came across as entrapment to me, and as well the police totally bullying all of Joe Exotic's character witnesses, the people that loyally worked at his farm for so long. The cops called up the one guy, said, you're either going to be on Team Joe or Team Federal Government, and that's how he got all of those people to really, like, go against Joe in the court of law. But the cops were desperate to pin this guy, cut deals with all of these fucking scum, and the cops were horrible in this whole thing, by the way. In a lot of ways, much like in McMillions, these cops just come across as fucking bumbling idiots. And it reminded me a lot of, like, First 48, where the only way police activity gets done is by them bullying shady con men into ratting on other people. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's no honor amongst thieves, and you can't trust any of these, of the testimonies of any of these, like, known scumbag con men. You know what I mean?
Well, especially that James Garrettson fatso, wave running idiot. He, like, cut a deal with the FBI, like, first on, and then kind of got everyone else involved, too.
This fucking douche didn't even cut a deal with the FBI. He cut a deal with, like, the animal authority over a lemur. This idiot that Jeff Lowe totally scammed into making the contact with Carol Baskins in an extortion plot. One of my other favorite quotes in this whole thing was this guy, like, texts Carol Baskins, like, if you want some information on Joe, give me a call. And then just a couple days later, the feds called me. And I was like, really? Like, so shocked that he was caught for his embezzlement scam immediately without protecting his number or taking any means of precaution. But so then that was literally like the fucking park ranger came in and was going to give him a fine for having a lemur, and he's like, all right, I'll give you all the info on Joe Dirt or on Joe Exotic. And then fucking Jeff Lowe, who's the biggest scumbag of them all, heard that Garrison was doing that and said, I've been waiting to tell the story, sought out. I think the thing with Jeff Lowe is he's either in like a Jack Nicholson Departed situation, only free because he's currently a rat for the federal government and they need him in a bigger case to climb up the ladder, or he's just free because they're building a bigger case on him right now. But there's no way, especially after this, there's no way that guy's not in jail before very long. But again, ultimately, I think like you kind of nailed it on the head, though. It's like they all deserve to be in jail, including Joe Exotic. And I think that in a lot of ways they did kind of set up a guilty man, because he deserves, like, he's, totally unsympathetic for being locked up and behind bars. However, was totally set up in this case, in my opinion. So
for sure, I think Joe Exotic's time should be reduced. But I mean, I'm definitely not on the bandwagon of free Joe Exotic.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm not. Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely, yeah, like you said, free him from 80 years potentially. But like, just to put it into perspective, I guess a little bit in a rather grisly, like PETA situation. Even what Joe Exotic was found guilty of, outside of breeding and trading across state lines, exotic tigers, okay, and as well euthanizing 5 tigers, he was found, okay. Just to put that in perspective. Mike Vick was found guilty of all of the same charges in terms of, breeding and selling interstate commerce dogs for the legal purposes of dog fighting, and was knowingly convicted to have, like, hung them up across the yard and shot them with guns, took them by their heads and banged them on the floor, would put them in, tubs of water. He, like, viciously and violently personally euthanized fucking, like, hundreds of dogs by hand and got 2 years in jail. So
yeah, let's go Birds.
You know what I mean? and then signed with the Eagles right afterwards. But you know what I mean? So it's just
I don't know what all this Mike Vick bashing turned into.
No, well, I'm just saying, Joe Exotic is doing 80 years. You know what I mean? Mike Vick did 2 for what would be in by my opinion, an animal rights world, a far greater crime and a far, you know what I mean, like. And of course, not to get into the animal rights side of it, but it seems like Joe Exotic is right now, like the weight of justice is totally off balance.
I 100% agree with you.
But I guess that would be the big question. I guess a couple other questions that you really have to ask yourself when after you watch Tiger King. But I guess kind of going hand in hand with Joe Exotic being a creep, but probably not the biggest of creeps. Out of the whole show, who do you believe is the biggest, like most evil creep. All right, I'm gonna run through the cast of characters. You got Joe Exotic, of course. All right. Then you got his business partner Jeff Lowe, whom we speak of. Okay. Then you've got Doc Antill, who I guess at the closing it does say his compound had been raided just a couple months ago at December of 2019. I didn't really look at what the charges were, but so Doc Antill, like the tiger-selling sex cult leader. Okay. Carol Baskins, the vicious businesswoman who killed her husband. Okay, or as well Fatso Garrison, who's just like a hilarious low-level fucking Oklahoma strip club owner, you know.
Yeah.
But out of those characters, Joe, Jeff, Doc, Carol, and Fatso, who is the biggest sleaze in your opinion?
All right, I'm actually going to throw some curveballs on your way. It sounds down to me to 3, 2 tied for second, 1 for first. And to me, Alan Glover, Jeff's right-hand man, is clearly one of the biggest creeps, dude. He's the actual, like, hitman for hire.
Okay, great
like,
call.
You know that dude killed people before.
Ex-con,
He's got that little teardrop tattoo.
Yep.
Coming in second, I would say Doc Antle for sure, just because he was shooting tiger cubs. Like, a lot of his Harlem of women were saying that, like, in the middle of the night, there would be little tiger cubs missing. He's like, well, people can't pet him anymore. And you would hear about him shooting people in the head.
No, for sure.
And he's just all in all super creep.
And when you're the operator of a sex cult and you've like possessed human beings, you can't have any doubt of whether or not they would kill an animal. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't think they do that to tigers. They obviously euthanize fucking tons of tigers.
Yeah, for sure. And like, not even because they were sick, just because like, well, this one's getting a little too big. Shoot in the face.
Yeah, no. What are we gonna do with fucking 200, 5-year-old tigers?
To me, though, the number one creep in this whole thing would have to be Carol Baskin's current husband, Howard, for no other reason than just their wedding photos of him on a leash in that little, like, tiger apron thing, like, bent down on all fours.
Yes.
That dude is the biggest cuck I've ever seen in my fucking
100%.
life.
And again, just going in the theme of all of these people being controlling, sociopathic, like sex fiends. Same thing with Carol Baskins, who killed killed her first husband, and her second husband is an obvious cuck, like Devin says, that she's like parading around, literally on a leash, and like so obviously is wearing the pants in that family. It's a fucking disgrace.
Yeah, no, Howard to me is for sure the number one creep in this whole situation, dude.
Honestly, great calls. Honestly, because Howard was definitely because Alan is definitely like the scariest, most evil guy. Is Alan? The rest of these guys are more like almost like white collar criminals, which on the redneck level still includes blowing shit up, you know. But they're like redneck white collar crimes. Alan is just like a fucking ground level street tough. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, big time. And the only reason I can't say Carol is just because she has, besides yo, 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 the best catchphrase I've ever heard. Fly all day, you cool cat kitten.
I know. Seriously. I'm definitely going to subscribe to her. Don't forget to ring the bell on my YouTube page.
I mean, spoiler alert, I think we all know how I'll be starting the Zoom room party tonight.
There you cool cats and kittens. Okay, I guess moving on to my other huge question of the show. I guess from a creepiest...
Well, what about you?
I guess for me...
What about you?
I guess for me, I would probably say I'll go just last place. Joe Exotic is easily the least creepy, and I'd say like most like honest, good person out of that whole list. I would literally say is Joe Exotic, as I think all of those other people are bigger scumbags than Joe is. I would say probably Doc, like I mentioned, just for the sex cult thing. Like that's really perverted, crazy shit that's going on. So he's a total maniac. He literally has them calling him Bogjois and like all sorts of crazy shit. So he's definitely up there. Although I'll go Carol though. I'd go Jeff and Carol tied for number 2 though. All right.
Okay.
And then Garrison is just like he would be if he was as smart as Joe Exotic, he would be as successful of a creep. However, he's just a fucking dope, but a total amoral sack of shit. And then Joe Exotic is just a sociopathic lunatic that got caught up in the vicious world of trying to ascend to the top in tiger breeding and webcasting.
Like you said, there were actually parts of this whole thing where I felt bad for him.
Yeah, no, honestly, he's like, a sympathetic character in some resorts. And in all honesty, just like Michael Vick in a lot of cases, in this country, if you do your time in the criminal justice system and whatnot, like that does, if Joe Exotic does 10, 15 years, that would be, you know what I mean? That would be good enough to resume his place in society, in my opinion. Like, he's not as evil as some of these other people.
Absolutely agree with you.
But so I guess, but in terms of the I guess other highlight, most hilarious character, because this is just nothing but a parade of amazing rednecks. So I guess we'll run through some of my favorites. I guess, or I'll give out the list of some of my favorites. See if Devin has any thoughts. But shirtless husband, legless zookeeper, the idiot producer who you mentioned earlier that missed out on this whole boat. That was just like, how do you start this campaign 10 years ago and have it totally fall flat on its face? Like, he was a hilarious schlep. And then my other favorite guy, Tim Stark, who was another zookeeper that had the most recent falling out. He had my favorite quote of the whole series, though. My favorite quote. He's talking about breeding tigers. He goes, first of all, they're endangered species. I mean, duh. Talking about the benefits of breeding tigers. Just like his indignant response to why is this a bad thing was one of the greatest things I've ever heard. And he was just a great, they didn't get into his past, but he kind of seems more like a crocodile hunter, just animal enthusiast who's also a total hillbilly. So, batshit crazy.
For sure.
But he seemed more like
that guy was great too, because every scene he was in, that if he was wearing a shirt, there was always a monkey inside of
it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. If he was wearing a shirt, there was a monkey inside. But very, very, very easily could be shirtless in this goddamn series. But he was a hilarious character. Am I missing any other greats? I guess Safi.
Yeah, I got a few. Staff, of course, is a hilarious character just because of. They could have saved her hand, but she was like, fuck it, take it off. I got to go to work tomorrow.
I know.
And then just never moisturized that stump of her. It was always so just dry and filthy looking. Like I said before, Howard, of course, is just a hilarious cuck. I did like the campaign manager.
Okay.
Who was
great call.
Josh Dial, who worked at the prior to being his campaign manager, just worked at the gun part in the local Walmart. And,
great call. And that was the guy that knew more about, and was like, Joe, he was like, I just knew more about politics than anybody else in Joe's life. He was the guy that were the clerk at the at the Walmart gun store. Was the political advocacy in Joe Exotic's life.
And you mentioned him too, John Renke, the guy who had missing his legs, who didn't lose them in a tiger attack, but in a zip lining accident.
Yeah, that's right. Some fucking hillbilly zip lining thing.
He doesn't have legs, and you're waiting for it. Like, dude, what is his fucking backstory?
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Oh yeah, these legs. No, I lost them in the crazy."
Everybody thinks it's a tiger accident, but a funny story about these legs.
And one more guy too, who's the head keeper at the zoo, Eric Callie, the guy with the long blonde hair.
Okay, yes, definitely. Head zookeeper.
Also has another great quote in the series where they're asking people about Doc Ansel, and they're like, what about you, Eric? How many wives do you think Doc Ansel has? He just goes, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, dude. That guy was a perfect, just antisocial, Columbine shooter who never shot up the school. You know what I mean? He grew up in the 80s before school shootings. Otherwise, definitely would have shot up the class. Fucking no doubt.
No doubt.
But just an antisocial fucking metalhead.
And that's just the thing with everybody that worked at the zoo, is that there was nobody who was trained with him. You're either all meth heads, potheads, fucking alcoholics who just stumbled upon the property and all right, you've been here a while. Want to be head zookeeper?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Sure.
They were just literally this fucking Joe Exotic just found they literally said a group of ragtag. This is the Ridiculous Six, basically. This fucking thing.
It's the Hillbilly Adventures.
Yeah, but I mean, honestly, that's what you're going to get when you're dealing with the Oklahoma tiger trade. You know what I mean? You're going to get a lot of hillbillies involved. But you're right. Those are some very solid choices. Potentially, I guess for me, I'm going my favorite. You raised up a very solid case for campaign manager because he was like actually because his thing as well was just like, you know, he got offered the job and then it's just like that's the kind of job I guess you take as like a young, you know what I mean, kid with ambition, like to just run any political campaign. But then just due to the cast of characters that were surrounding, he was like, dude, I couldn't fucking like how could I not show up to work every day with these assholes fucking. But so he was
wake
great.
up sometimes with Joe Exotic's husband pointing a gun in his face. He's like, come on, man, I told you not to do that. And then the guy just shoots himself in the head instead.
That's not funny, Travis. But I guess my favorite character probably would be Shirtless Husband, I gotta say.
Sure. I'm happy to not be.
Yeah, I mean the hilarious development that his teeth were totally fine this whole time, but the between the teeth and then of course just the ending up or going out with the girl that was the clerk, and just like after showing all this such a great turn after the first couple episodes, just being like a devoted, loving gay hillbilly, to then just being like a straight meth head a couple episodes later was an absolute amazing turn.
Ooh, baby, it's time to get geeked up.